Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today I wanted to sit down and share my thoughts on the most recent episode of American Horror Story. So season 8, it's Apocalypse, and episode 2, which is called The Morning After. Really quick side note here, I saw that the episode was directed by Jennifer Lynch, which I thought was really interesting since she is David Lynch's daughter, and I really like his work. So I do like the fact that they do have some interesting directors this season. I was actually pointed out by a commenter on my previous video that Sarah Paulson is going to be directing one of the episodes in the season coming up, so that will be interesting to see how she does the episode. But anyway, I am here to talk about the most recent episode. So I did this last week as well. I'll just explain how I'm going about it. I'm starting off with a recap, just explaining what happened in the episode, and then I'll be doing more of a review and just sharing predictions and my thoughts on the episode. So I'm not going to ramble on anymore. I will get started with the recap, and I'll also put a timestamp up on the screen if you want to skip forward to the review section rather than hear me talk about the episode, since I know not everyone will want to watch that. So that time should be up on screen now if you want to skip ahead. Otherwise, I'm just going to get started with the recap now. So just like last week as well, I did make some notes which I'll be referring to just to jog my memory. The episode seemed to pick up pretty quickly from the previous week's episode. I did notice that based on some dialogue. It seems like it happened maybe the same night as where it ended last time, or the next day. But the episode does start in Emily's room where there are snakes starting to slither around. You see one at first and then a whole pile of them, and she's obviously very scared by this, but Ms. Mead does walk in, and potentially one of the other guards or people running the bunker. Ms. Mead sees the snakes and she does come to the conclusion that they are from up above, but they don't seem affected by any radiation or anything, so she also makes another comment saying that they'll be eating them. Also, it did happen a little later in the episode, but I'll mention now that the snakes did come back to life when they were ready to be eaten. They were already chopped up and cooked, but they started to slither around on the dinner table. In this episode, Timothy and Emily are continuing their romance, and they were holding hands talking at one point. Ms. Mead did see this, and obviously they snatched their hands away, but it was very obvious that she saw this anyway. After this, Michael meets the group, everyone in the bunker, and he explains to all of them about the sanctuary, how he'll be able to pick people to come along with him, and his selection method is called cooperating, which is obviously just a silly and funny term since the organization that he works for and has saved these people is called the Cooperative. Michael also told everyone that for the people who weren't chosen, there was going to be poison left there just to prevent people being eaten by cannibals. I feel like that's a small little thing that they mentioned, but I feel like it will come back into play later on in the season. Otherwise, why would they mention something like that? Now, Gallant volunteered to go first for the cooperation session, where he just spoke a lot about his lifestyle and how he didn't really get on that well with his mum. There was a great scene where it was just a flashback and he was drinking bisque through a gas mask to piss her off at a dinner party. While this is happening, Emily and Timothy are conspiring to escape the bunker, and the Rubberman comes to visit Gallant, or it's a person in the same Rubberman suit from season 1. He doesn't ask any questions, but later on it definitely seems like he thinks it's Michael. They have sex, and Evie, Gallant's grandmother, sees them, and she goes to Ms. Mead to dob him in, just because she knows it's against Venable's rules in the bunker. Emily and Timothy wait for Michael to leave his room, and then they sneak in and snoop around a little bit in his computer, reading some files about Venable and the Cooperative. And while they're snooping, the Rubberman watches on. He's just up on the ceiling. Now, Michael had left his room to go and speak with Venable about how she's running the outpost and how he's really not happy with it. The fact that she's come up with rules of her own and going against the Cooperative. She does say she is following how things are meant to be. Just an example, they argue about the rules of not having sex, how they're not allowed to do that without authorization. After they argue about this for a bit, Michael says that he wants to examine Venable. She does protest, but he says to lose the dress. He only does look at her back though. She doesn't unzip it very far. He does have a look at her back, and it seems quite curved, or I don't know if it was scarred. It definitely seemed curved to me, so I don't know if it's scoliosis or something else, but that seems to explain why she has the cane. Venable was very clearly upset about him seeing her back, and he did also mention to her that she didn't pass his test, which she was also quite upset by. They were staring intently at each other, but then interrupted by Ms. Mead. Ms. Mead was there to inform Venable on what Evie had told her about Gallant and the Rubberman. Venable suggests that the person in the rubber costume was Michael, since he's new there, and she seems to think it was him. Although I feel like even if she didn't actually suspect it was him, she'd probably blame him anyway, considering what he's done so far. The two women go to see Gallant, who is tied up in another part of the bunker, and Venable just keeps asking him who it is. He doesn't give up any information, even though Ms. Mead is whipping him. He still doesn't tell them, so eventually they leave. After they leave, Michael goes to see him down there, and the two of them are talking. It's very clear that Gallant is sort of saying, oh, I wouldn't give you up, but Michael tells him that it wasn't him in the suit anyway, and that he wouldn't sleep with him if he was the last man on Earth. He also informs Gallant that the person who dropped him in was his grandmother, Evie. And then as Michael leaves, he sets Gallant free to go and confront his grandmother, which of course Gallant does. He finds his grandmother, and the two of them bicker about who deserves to live there more and who deserves to get a place in the sanctuary more, while Timothy and Emily, with the knowledge that sex really isn't forbidden by the cooperative, do choose to sleep together. So while they're doing that, the rubber man seems to walk in or see them. But then we see the rubber man walking all throughout the bunker, being followed by Mr. Gallant, who follows him into a room, and it seems at first that the two might sleep together again. But Gallant does make a comment about the last man on Earth. He does seem to think that Michael is in the suit, and he's so enraged that he grabs a pair of scissors and stabs them into the rubber man's chest. At this point, we see, along with Gallant, Michael walking in behind him, and then Gallant turns to look at the body he just stabbed, and it's not the rubber man, there's no rubber suit in sight, but he's actually crouching over his grandmother and has stabbed his grandmother. So obviously something's gone on. Maybe Michael is messing with his head, or there could perhaps be something else going on, but he thought it was the rubber man, and he just seemed to stab his grandmother, Evie, instead. And she is lying there stabbed, motionless, not breathing or doing anything, so it does seem that she is very likely dead. At this point, Timothy and Emily are caught by Ms. Mead. She barges into the room with another one of the guards. I can't remember the other guard's name, or if we've heard her name. It was actually the tall woman from Freak Show, so the previous season. What was her name? That's gonna bug me. Amazon Eve. That was on the tip of my tongue. I don't know why I didn't remember that, but yeah. I don't know if they've actually said her character name in the current show. She isn't really in it that much. They take Timothy and Emily away for what they've done. Venable does sort of yell at them and say what they've done is wrong. She says that they're going to be taken away to be punished, which we can kind of assume is being executed, considering what we saw in the previous episode and what she told them. They are taken to a separate room and knelt down. Now, there is a gun pointing right behind Timothy's head, but he does fight back. He manages to steal the gun and fire off a shot at Ms. Mead, and then he gets knocked out by the other guard, but Ms. Mead does manage to run away, at which point we see her wound very briefly, and I did get a good look at this. I feel like it was one of those blink and you miss it moments, or if you weren't paying attention, perhaps you just thought she was shot and bleeding, but I could see there were sparks, and you could sort of see wires on her abdomen where she was shot, so definitely not a normal gunshot wound. Also, there wasn't even fake blood or anything, there was just yellow sort of goop. Nevertheless, she does seem very distressed about the fact she has been shot, and she's sort of examining her wound and her hands, and then the episode ends. If I don't manage to do this every week, it's definitely because my neighbours have ruined it for me. Alright, so now I'm done with the recap, and I'm just going to be going through my thoughts on the episode, more of a review, and just talking about some predictions and things. So I've got a few notes here again, and funnily enough, the first thing I wrote down is the fact I love Michael's hair. I mean, really it is quite amazing, but I did note down as well, it definitely seems like there's a lot of biblical symbolism again, just like last week, and I guess it's maybe kind of to be expected, but obviously the snakes, and maybe sort of seeing Timothy and Emily as a bit of an Adam and Eve. Now, we also seem to know a little bit about who might have a spot at the sanctuary. So at this stage, it seems as though Venable has been turned down for a spot at the sanctuary, and Evie's been killed by Gallant, so it really doesn't seem likely that she's going anywhere. Although, considering this is about the end of the world, and we've already seen Witches back from the dead in the promos, maybe she'll come back. I really don't know, but at this stage it seems like she's dead. As for Gallant, I can't remember the outcome of his cooperating. All I remember is that Michael was saying he didn't want to sleep with him, but I don't really know if he said if he had a spot at the sanctuary or not. Maybe he didn't make that decision just yet, but if anyone does remember that, please let me know down below. At this stage, Timothy and Emily were scheduled to be executed, or at the very least punished, but that wasn't successfully done this episode, so I really don't think they're going to kill them off so soon or potentially at all. They definitely seem like they're being built up to be big characters or quite important this season, so I really don't think we need to worry about them at this point. Also, I think the biggest revelation from this episode is the fact that Ms. Mead appears to be an android, or at the very least, part of her body seems to be mechanical. I have a feeling that, all of her might be an android, but who knows how they will explain this in the next episode or coming episodes. It's an interesting thing to think about since this is kind of new territory for American Horror Story. In the coming episodes, I'm very excited to see what happens with Michael just being there. His mere presence seems to cause so much chaos, and it seems like there's a lot of weirdness following him, or things in the bunker have gotten even more strange since he's appeared, so obviously the snakes, and also the rubber man. I don't know how many other people have thought about this, but I feel like the only thing that makes sense with the rubber man appearing is the fact that he is quite symbolic for Michael's dad. Obviously Tate is Michael's dad, and Tate used to wear that rubber man suit in season 1, so I feel like that is why the rubber man is being shown. I'm not saying that it's definitely Tate inside the suit or anything, but that rubber man imagery is obviously tied to Tate, and Tate is a part of Michael. He is his dad, so I feel like that's why he's popping up, but it would be very interesting to see if there is a face uncovered underneath that rubber man mask or not. At this point, I also want to go through some theories, and some of these are things that I've thought of myself, and some of them are things that I've read. The first one is something that I thought of, and I know quite a few people have since I've read it, since I thought about it, and that's the idea that maybe everyone is dead already, and perhaps they're already in hell. Now, I guess this idea just came to me since I guess I'd recently watched, sorry, I might cut that out. I've watched a show with a similar sort of concept lately, but maybe you haven't seen it and I don't want to spoil it, but if you have seen the show, you probably know what show I'm referring to. Anyway, I had watched a show where people were in hell and they didn't know about it. Maybe it's the same sort of thing here, although I don't think it's very likely. It is something interesting to think about. After all, we have seen hell in Coven before. There were different hells, and the Antichrist is there in the bunker, so you never know. Some other things that I read which seemed kind of interesting, and I really liked this one, is the idea that witches will be coming into the season to reverse the apocalypse. So maybe everything we're seeing now will be later undone by the witches and kind of putting the world back in good order and preventing everything that we've just seen. So I'm interested if that comes to pass. I feel like that theory is pretty plausible. And the next point I have here is not really a theory, but it's kind of an idea about how this season will be structured, that potentially the first 4 episodes, or however many, might be set in Apocalypse, and then there might be a few that are just Coven, and then there might be a few that are Murder House, or perhaps that order might be changed a little bit, but they might have different segments in the season, kind of like they did in Roanoke. Obviously that one was split in half by the documentary and then the reality show or potential reality show. So maybe they'll do the same thing this time, maybe not. Either way, I'm very keen to see characters from seasons past pop back. Alright, I'm back. After hearing really weird noises in the ceiling, my camera shut off because I had... Okay, people are reversing up the street. What is going on this afternoon? I just had to grab a different memory card since I had just filled that previous one up. But I don't have that much more to say. I think I was just saying before how I'm excited to see characters pop up from season 1 and 3. Obviously the second episode has ended and we still haven't seen any familiar faces, but who knows, maybe some of them will start popping up next week. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. I know I'm going to try and be patient, and I can't wait to see next episode already. But now I think I'm going to leave this video here. I did want to say thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up if you did, and let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the episode and season so far. I know last week a lot of you were commenting and sharing your thoughts, and I thought that was a lot of fun to chat back with you and just see what you're thinking. So hopefully we can do that again. But for now, I just wanted to say another big thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!